made it. All right. All right. Okay, here we go. Let me turn the sound off on the computer. We can get started. I'm on time. Thank goodness. All right. And my noisy neighbors have all gone away. Or maybe I'm wrong. I'm here. And I don't know if you can hear my noisy neighbors in the back. They're home too. Hi. Hi, CM. All right. So now I'm getting feedback from my computer and this. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining me. I hope you guys can't hear all that noise back there. Hi, Guy. All right. So did everybody see the title of tonight's show, which is going to be about additional skills medical coders need? I'm going to be talking about that today. Oh my gosh, now they're being really loud. Hi, Shannon. All right. So I hope everybody had a good day today. Okay, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Okay, so some of the additional skills that you need as a medical biller and coder, or even just a medical coder. These are some additional skills that are not related to medical coding, because of course we'll talk about that, but later on. Of course, you have to know medical terminology and all that good stuff, which I will be talking about in a little bit. But some of the other additional like transferable skills is what we're going to be talking about tonight. So let us begin. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Okay, so those additional skills that you will probably notice on the, I am so sorry. I wish I could pause this and restart the filming again. Oh my God, they are so loud. Okay, so with these additional skills that you see in the job postings for medical coders, sometimes they're asking for people to be proficient or have knowledge in Microsoft Office Outlook, or the Office suite. So that is something that is very important. You do have to be computer literate when you are a medical coder, because you're going to be working in different types of systems. And when you work in these different types of systems, you have to be able to send emails, and you have to be able to use spreadsheets like Excel and PowerPoint and things like that. And if you don't know how to use these things, that's okay. There's plenty of free resources out there that will help you to learn about how these programs work. And once you get to where you're familiar enough, you can put that on your resume. You don't have to be a master at it, but you do have to at least know your way around. Obviously, Outlook is very easy to use. There's different features on there, like sending emails, blind carbon copy or a carbon copy. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with those, but you can't be scared of working with the computer. So you have to remember that that is going to be something that is going to be very important, especially when you are looking at all of the qualifications that you need when you are out there looking for a job. Make sure that anything that you possess, any of those skills, is actually on your resume. I talk about this a lot. Your resume and your cover letter says a lot about you. This is what is going to get the employer interested in even meeting with you. And so this resume has to look good. And so many times people have told me, Blue, I'm just not a writer. I don't like to write. Too bad. You have to get used to it, because when you get in the real world of medical coding, you're going to have to be writing things like queries. And then if you have to provide any type of education sometimes you may not be able to do that in person, so you may have to write it out. So this is something that you have to get used to. And everybody has a good writer in them. You just have to do it. And with schools and things the way they are now, sometimes like it's not like a huge emphasis for schools anymore with writing papers. And that's unfortunate because I think it hurts a lot of adults when they get into the working world, because then they're not able to put together those emails. And if you want your information to be put across in an efficient manner, knowing how to put it together in emails is very, very important. Knowing how to articulate what you're going to say is crucial, because you're dealing with people who are alpha personalities when you're dealing with these providers. They're very educated and they have very little patience sometimes. And sometimes they're very patient. It really all depends on the provider themselves. But providers tend to hold medical coders to a different standard. Sometimes that standard is a lot higher, and sometimes they're not expecting much out of their medical coders because that's what they've been shown by previous medical coders, that they didn't care. So anytime I give you guys information, it's because I want you to be very engaged with your provider. It is so supremely important. And people think this is a step that you can actually skip over, and you can't. So another skill that you can acquire on your own, besides the Microsoft Office, Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, is actually taking leadership classes or watching TED Talks about leadership or reading leadership books. This is another skill that you're not going to be taught in medical coding school or any of the other places where you might learn medical coding. This is something that you have to do self-taught. And why, Blue? I'm not going to be a leader. I'm not going to be somebody's boss. You don't have to be, but you have to be able to communicate with alpha personalities. And in order to do that, you have to prepare yourself like an alpha personality to be able to communicate with them. So that's why I say getting classes in leadership is supremely important. If you don't want to take a class, it's okay. Read a book or watch a TED Talk or something like that. There's so many resources on YouTube. YouTube is a wonderful resource for all these things that you need to learn about the working world and the business world. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to be able to defend yourself when it comes to your codes. You're going to have to be able to take criticism if your codes are incorrect. You're going to have to be able to say, you know what, I was wrong, and be able to learn from that and move on. And there's some people that can't do that. And I've seen coders who will never grow as a result of it. And it literally makes me sick to my stomach, because there are some people who have such a great potential, but because they want to be stubborn and they want to be like, well, no, I'm right, and I know I'm right, and actually they're wrong, because science and everything else proves that they're wrong, but they're not able to see that because they want to feel like they're better than everybody else, and you can't do that. Medical coding involves a lot of humility, and you have to be able to know how to harness that. So working on yourself and your own skills is going to be very, very critical. This is stuff that, they're not. Come on. Really? So you reject the call once. Okay, it's done. Don't keep calling. Unless it's an emergency, which I don't think so. But anyway, moving right along. As I was saying, when you are building your own skill set, right, of being stronger, maybe you're a shy person. I'm a shy person too. And in order to be more successful at picking out the correct codes, you have to be able to communicate. And you have to get over that fear of communicating with other people. So building those skills of leadership and communication, speech, public speaking is very important. Some people join like Toastmasters or something like that, and they work on their public speaking skills. That is very good for somebody who is going to be a medical coder, because even if you're not going to be speaking into a big crowd, you are going to be speaking to small crowds. Maybe you're going to be speaking to other medical coders. Maybe you're going to be speaking to a group of providers. So whatever the case may be, getting those skills of public speaking does help. Some people have really strong accents, or they have really like a very strong drawl when they're talking. And so it makes it very difficult for the provider to be able to understand. You have to make things as simple as possible when it comes to getting the providers to understand what you're trying to say. So you have to make it very easy for them. Being able to speak clearly is very important when we're talking about this stuff. So listening to dialect coaches will also help if you have a speech issue. So getting that's another skill, because then you're going to be able to say that you speak English fluently, and they'll be able to understand you. So you can put that on your resume, English fluency, written and verbal. Because a lot of times when you're looking at these job postings, they will say the candidate must be able to speak English and write English fluently. If you don't believe me, check the job postings, because it's out there. And it's true, because a lot of times providers, if they can't understand what the person is saying, they don't want to listen to them at all. I've seen it many times when the medical coder has a very thick accent, and it's very difficult for them to understand anything that person is saying. So they just don't want to listen. And unfortunately, it's that clinic that suffers. So getting that skill is going to help you. And it's only going to shine you up a lot more and give you that readiness, so that you're not going to have that fear when it comes time for you to make those moves with these providers. So oh gosh, Guy. No, those are not my kids. I do not have children, but trust me, no, not that loud ever. I don't think that was ridiculous. It says, how do you feel about coding colonoscopies as screening versus surveillance? How do you feel about coding colonoscopies as screening versus surveillance? I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Can you elaborate? No, those were the neighbor's kids. So, but I guess they're new, because I've never heard these children before. And so that was all that racket earlier. It's so embarrassing, especially when I trying to film. It's just like, can y'all be quiet? I'm trying to film. But anyway, so that's some of the skills. And then you may notice that in some of the job postings, it'll tell you the specific electronic health record that the facility uses. And if you haven't had any experience with electronic health records like Epic or Cerner or any of those things, don't panic, because a lot of times when you are becoming a new employee of that facility, they will give you training in their processes and in their electronic health record. That's usually not an issue, because that is part of the onboarding process. It is knowing how to medical code that they want you to be able to have already mastered. They want you to know how to code. That's what they're looking for. And that is more important to them than anything else. If you have a strong background in medical terminology or anatomy and pathophysiology, that is going to go a long way, because that is a skill. That is not something that you should leave off of your resume. Because again, when you're looking at the job postings, it is saying candidate must be proficient in medical terminology, anatomy, and pathophysiology. Now, if you're just beginning and you know enough to have some legs and move around, then you're okay. It is still a skill that you had to acquire in order to be able to get through medical coding school or to be able to get through your test. So it's not like you don't know it. Don't discount yourself on things that you've been studying, which is anatomy, physiology, medical terminology, and those kinds of things. So I'm looking at the comment that's just coming in. There's a lag. Can you explain what documentation you code from for diagnosis codes? For example, labs, radiology reports, medication lists, etc. Just a Kid in the Hall says, I've seen some people code colons as a screening of patients coming in with a history of polyps, and some coded as surveillance with a diagnosis of Z09. So I'd have to see the documentation on that. but Z09 is a follow-up for a non-malignant. So that is something completely different. There is history of codes if they had that, but if they have a history of a malignant neoplasm in the colon, it's going to be Z08 because that's the follow-up after for malignant neoplasm. So that's just, it's too broad. I need something, I need a specific scenario in order to say, oh yes, it's this and it's this and it's this. It's not just what my feelings are about coding it this way or that way. I will say that colonoscopies for some can get very confusing, especially when you bring in Medicare and you bring in all these other things. Yeah, that can get a little bit more confusing. And then you have different rules with different insurance companies. That can lead to even more confusion. So, hi, Blue, question about ortho. Ooh. For post-op fracture of a surgery, do you add the Z code for the ICD? No. So when it comes to, and this is an argument that I have a lot with people, when a patient has been injured, so this is fracture, correct? This fracture, they're coming in with this fracture and they're in the subsequent phase of their care. Or say they had an ORIF, right? I'm assuming that you are talking about them being post-op surgery for an ORIF, open reduction internal fixation. So once they come out and they're in that subsequent phase of the healing phase, you would only code the injury codes. You're not going to report any Z codes while they're in the subsequent phase of their 90 days, right? You're not going to report Z codes at all, because Z codes do not go on injuries. Z codes are for organic conditions, the orthopedic aftercare and things like that. Those are aftercare for nervous system, right? For the carpal tunnel, when they do that, that's those Z codes because those are organic conditions. Another example of an organic condition would be like if they had a surgery for osteoarthritis, and that would be Z4789 because that would be orthopedic aftercare. But if you're talking about injury or anything related to injuries, then you're going to be dealing with the injury codes, and you would not use those Z codes in the post-op aftercare. How they're going to know that this is a post-op patient is with that 99024, which is the post-op code for the, it's letting them know that this patient is still in the global period. So that 99024 is a CPT code that you would report with those injury codes. So does that help you? Hi, Lisa. But yes, you all know how much I love talking about injuries. I did do that video earlier, no, not earlier this week, it was last week, about studying the external causes section. Very fascinating stuff. Thank you for clarifying. You're welcome. So back to our skills, what we need to acquire. Some people, if you've been studying Spanish, that does help to have on your resume. You do have to be able to speak it if you're going to be able to put it on your resume. But some people who are bilingual forget to put that on their resume. It's very vital. You know, it's one of those skills that they do ask for on some job postings, that if the candidate is bilingual, it is preferred. So if you do speak Spanish or you speak some other language, be sure to put it down there, because you never know who or what population that particular facility is serving. Okay. Shelly says, is the Z code for aftercare ortho appropriate for skilled nursing facility coding? Again, I would need I would need a particular scenario on what you're looking at in order to be able to answer that one. But skilled nursing facility coding, they still use the same ICD-10 CM book. So, I mean, I don't think there's any diagnoses that are not allowed. But again, I'd have to see the scenario to see what you're talking about. Emma says, I have a pre-employment exam this Friday. Yay! I'm very excited, but a little nervous because I have 3 hours for the test, and that seems like a really long time to do it. Is that a normal amount of time? Yes. But sometimes they will give you like a day. I mean, it really all depends. If they're actually sitting there and talking with you, then they're going through scenarios with you. If it is you have 3 hours from the time we send it to you so that you can look it up and then you can send it back, then it's still normal because they want to see how fast you can code. So Elizabeth says, do you recommend having a professional resume writer look at your resume before sending it out? Hold on that. Hold that thought. Let's put a pin in that one. New here to your channel. Hi, Debbie. And I have started classes and studying AAPC. I test in August and have just started 3 weeks ago. Still tabbing my books. That's good. Keep it up. All right. So Elizabeth, the golden question. Do I recommend professional resume writing? All right. I will say this. So I always recommend not hiring a professional resume writer. However, I do offer this service. I don't say that I offer this service a lot because I want people to be able to do this on their own. Nobody is going to know your skills like you know your skills. And professional resume writers are very expensive. I happen to be on the cheaper side because I am trying to help you guys out. But at the same time, if you want to do a resume review with me, we look at your resume and we go line by line to see where you can spruce things up so that way you can rewrite it yourself. Because a lot of times when you get hired on with these places and they see this wonderful, beautiful resume in front of them, they're going to expect that same cadence when you are writing to providers, or if you're writing to the supervisor, they're going to expect that same cadence. But sometimes people cannot seem to, they know what their skills are, but they can't harness it into speech and writing, right? So that's where I come in. And so I always tell people, hey, if you want to do it this way, we'll just review your resume together. Of course, there's a fee for that. And it's cheap. And so then it's just like, okay, we go line by line. I give you ideas on the things that you can punch up, things that you can shorten, things that you can change, because sometimes when we say things, we're repeating in the resume. And sometimes you may be adding words in there that really don't belong. They're kind of like filler words. Resumes are meant to give them the facts, give the potential employer the facts. That's what they want on resumes. And sometimes people just don't know. And they say, well, I don't have any skills because I haven't been in the field before. This is my first job. It doesn't mean that you haven't been trained and that you don't know the skills that the employer actually wants. So that is an option out there. But on the real, I don't recommend professional resume writers. I recommend that you do it yourself. If you want to do a resume review with me, again, my fee is very cheap. But I do rewrite them. But again, it's a little bit more. And it's something that I would do as a last resort. And only because it's so important for you to be a good writer. But yes, I do. And if you are interested, you can check out my LinkedIn page where I do have 3 currently who left me a feedback about my services. So just something to know. Hi, Caitlin. Better late than never. Blue's first commandment, thou shalt not have professional ghosts write anything. I like that. That sounds good. Caitlin says, I have an interview tomorrow. Yay! For a coding position. Yay! I'm excited for you. Yes, I will wish you the best of luck. Great advice. Makes sense. Thank you. You're welcome. And see, Caitlin, you have lots of people cheering you on. All right. But yes, resumes are a big deal, guys. And, there's also mentors out there that can look at your resume and see if there's anything that's missing. But I mean, again, those options are out there for you. But I really don't recommend the professional resume writers that charge you like $300 or $400 for a resume. I don't charge that, but they can get that high. And it's just like they say, well, you know, it's guaranteed this and that. There is no guarantees, guys, you know. And a lot of times they're going to be using things on there that are very benign and things that are just very bland and not, there's pretty language, and then there's language of somebody who understands what they're talking about. And so that's the difference between professional resume writers who are not even in the field and people who actually are in the field working with you, right? And so something else to think about. Yes. So, but those are some skills that you can have. You can look up tutorial videos, like I said, about the EMRs, the electronic medical records, that are on YouTube. Some of them are old and outdated, so but I don't recommend like getting like certified with their certificate for Microsoft Office or anything like that. I had somebody ask me that the other day, and no, I don't recommend that at all. So that's my recommendation on that. But yes, looking for a job, it takes a lot. And a lot of times people will say, well, what are they looking for in a job? You know, like, what do they want? It's literally telling you right in front of your face what it is that they want. They want somebody who has proficiency in medical terminology, anatomy, and pathophysiology, and somebody that has some coding experience, yes. But do you understand ICD-10-CM? Do you understand ICD-10-PCS? Do you understand CPT and HCPCS? Yes. Write that down. Don't just put on your resume diagnosis coding, procedure coding. I've seen that so many times. I'm like, bro. Yes, we are all in ICD-10 times right now, right? But not too long ago, right? Before 2015, we were all in ICD-9 times. The employer doesn't know if you mean diagnosis coding from ICD-9 times or ICD-10 times. And yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate for the minute because that is what they're going to be saying. They want specifics. That's what is going to be looking really good on your resume, is when you write specifics, not just very plain things like diagnosis coding, procedure coding. Okay. What about ICD-10-CM, ICD-10-PCS, CPT, HCPCS, modifiers, E&M? Those types of things are going to help you because they're more specific. They like specifics. So it's not about assuming things. We as medical coders, we're all about the facts. Just the facts, ma'am. Oh, wow, that is expensive. I will just go over it myself and my anxiety. Well, you can if you want to. But keep in mind, what is the employer looking for? Specifically, what are they looking for? That job that you're trying to apply for. If you possess any of those skills, if you can type and they're asking you to be able to type. Sometimes they say 50 words per minute. Sometimes they don't even put that on there because everybody should know how to type. But we don't have to type as fast because it's not typing. We mostly deal with just the codes. So sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. And for some people that I've helped them with their billing resumes, and I said, okay, can you do 10 key by touch? And they're like, what is that? 10 key. It's the number pad on your keyboard. But I think it's just different. Technology is different now. It doesn't have like the numbers on the keypad on the side. So, you know, that's what I'm used to. And you have the little 5. It has a little bubble in the middle where you can use that as your center guide, and then you can, at least that's what I did when I came up in school. I did 10 key by touch. So, you know, I always have that on my resume because I can do that, you know. So, hi, Tasman. It's nice to see you. But yes, everybody gets nervous about these skills and what else they should put on their resume. But at the same time, I'm giving you guys the answer, which is to work on your self-esteem, work on your own leadership skills. Once you start getting those leadership skills, it will make you stronger. Now, 10 years ago, I didn't have these. A little over 10 years ago, I didn't have these skills. It wasn't up until 2016 that I started, 2015 actually, 2015, 2016, that I started really getting into, okay, I've got the passion part down of my work, but now I need to get the other part in, which is my approach, my everything else, right? Which is the leadership skills. I do have strong leadership skills now. I'm not a leader, I'm not in a leadership position, but I do communicate daily with alpha personalities. And some have been easy, some have not been so easy. So it really depends on who you're working with, but I am prepared for everything. I'm not caught off guard anymore by the unknown. Like, how do I handle it if the provider is very quiet? Or how do I handle it if the provider is very loud and rambunctious? How do I handle it then? So that is something that you will learn with time. You can't just concentrate on, I'm anxious, I'm anxious. Yes, you're anxious, but use that energy to do your studies and to do leadership skills and things like that, because that is what is going to give you that energy to keep moving forward. And when you have the energy to keep moving forward, it's going to make things a lot easier for you, because then you're going to be like, okay, I possess these skills now. I'm coming in a little bit stronger than I did the last time, because like I said, I didn't have these, and I went through that. I can't speak, you speak, because I had my partner with me. We worked together, and she was like, oh, Blue, you be okay? I'm like, no, I can't, I'm so nervous. And she's like, okay, I'll do it. She goes, and then you go. So I said, okay. So it just took me a minute to warm up, and now I come into the room, I'm speaking, I'm running the show. I'm doing those things. I don't have a partner anymore. It's literally all me. The orthopedic and podiatry clinic is all me. Those are my babies. That's my clinic, and I'm very proud of it. They do very well, and they do very well because I actually care, and I get in there with them, and I make sure that they're doing things like they're supposed to do. And I don't hassle them about stupid things. That's another thing I'll have to do another video about later on. Is that sometimes like coders think that they can use queries as a weapon. Oh, I'm going to query them. They know better. They know they should be doing this. They know they should be doing. No. Queries are not weapons. Queries are actually part of the process when it is needed. It is not a punishment tool to give the provider just a bunch of queries and overwhelm them, because what ends up happening is that provider's eventually not even going to respond to your queries if you're using them inappropriately. So that's why it's very important. Communicating is so important, and not using queries inappropriately. Hi, Martha. I still call it 10 key 2. Yay, Elizabeth. I'm not the only one. I was worried there for a minute that I was the only one that was still calling it that. So I'm so glad. But yes. So that is my show today. I know it's 30 minutes, but I just want to come on here and give you guys that heads up about those additional skills. And you don't have to do them if you don't want to. If you just want to study and, hey, I'm going to get this job and, it'll be okay, and I don't have to do all that, you don't have to apply yourself. This is just what I recommend. And I always recommend this to coders. I want coders to be successful. That's why I always give these tips out, because this is stuff that they're not telling you in medical coding school. This is not stuff that people are very used to. And sometimes when coders don't have access to this kind of information, it's almost a point of magic that happens when a coder finally gets it. Because like I said, when it happened to me, when the second that it happened to me, which was a provider was complaining, he actually didn't complain. He went the long way to get my attention rather than just coming to me like I had asked him to. But see, that's me thinking as like us, like we're regular, right? Like if you have an issue, come to me. Like, okay, cool. Hey, Blue, I got an issue with you. That's not how people who are like of a different intelligence, it's higher intelligence, is not how they do things. They communicate differently. And so that was his deal. He physically wanted me to go to his office, and start talking to him so we can have this interaction, this one-on-one, because he didn't like email. And because he didn't like email, anything that came through on email, he generally just ignored. So that was something that was an eye-opener for me because I didn't know that. And like I said, it wasn't until that moment I was like, okay, then how do I get to this point where I'm more comfortable speaking to these alpha personalities, where I'm going to be okay if I'm in a room by myself, and it's just like, okay, how do I speak to them? And that was when I was just like, okay, let's start watching some TED Talks. And I started slow. I did the baby steps. I started with TED Talks, and then my facility got to have the Arbinger Institute training. This is not an ad for the Arbinger Institute, but I will tell you guys that outward thinking mindset really changed things for me. I mean, it really did, because it turned into, it's not about me, it's about the other people. It's about their responses to all these other things, and it had nothing to do with me. And once I got it, right? Once that light bulb kicked on, I was just like, oh, now I get it. Now this makes sense. And I don't have to take things personally. So once I took that off of my plate, that freed up a lot of energy. Like, okay, if I get yelled at for a minute, I'm like, oh, okay, you know, it's not me. It's whatever they're going through. Because providers have a ton of responsibility, and they have so much going on. And I look at them now, and at the time it was just like, okay, they're taking care of everybody, but who's taking care of them? And so that was where it was just like, okay. So I started to do my bear trap. And if you don't know the bear trap story, I have a candy basket out, and it's got candy. It's got all kinds of candy. It's got just really good candy too. Reese's I cannot keep in my candy basket. I can't. I'm having to constantly get that stuff. Snickers, I can't keep those in there either. But I have like bottled water, and I have this candy basket. And when I first started putting it out, and I was on the hallway with the doctors, they were like, can I have some? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, you know, help yourself. So they would come in, and they would start to relax, and they would start to talk and open up. And then all of a sudden it was like party house. Like they started to really like, hey, well, what about this? And what about that? And I have a question about this. And it just made them feel more comfortable. So when you start to think about how others are, it's going to be more comfortable for them. And it was just a small effort that I put forward. It wasn't anything huge. It wasn't anything extravagant. It was literally a small effort. It's a basket of candy and a bottle of water. So the basket did get famous. You know, my providers had gone down to another facility in our complex, and it's out of town. And they were talking, and they said, hey, you know, we heard that your coder, you know, they gave you snacks. You know, what's that all about? So they go, yeah, you know, our coder, she has this basket of candy, and she just leaves it out. They go, well, why does she do that? And then they're like, well, that's when they called it the bear trap. You know, you lay out food, right, to attract the bear, so you can take pictures of the bear or whatever. And it's the same thing. Alpha personalities, bears. So you know, and so that was how that analogy kicked up. So I was like, oh, you know, I thought it was funny, because I was like, really, like, out of town, y'all just talking about this candy basket. It's just candy, you know, but it's the thought that went into it. That's what counted. So, but it's that extra effort. And I'm not saying that you have to do this, but I'm just saying how my experience was, just so you guys know. But that was what helped me to develop too, is having that outward thinking mindset from the Arbinger Institute, and being able to get those skills. It makes it a lot easier than being nervous and scared and not being able to speak at all, you know. Adeline says, hello again. What websites do you recommend to look up more about office orthopedic guidelines? I like you, Adeline. Orthoinfo.org. It's all one word, orthoinfo.org. When I update the video in a little bit, I will leave that in the description box below. Orthoinfo.org has the breakdown of the pathology of broken bones and things like that. You can go through the guidelines when it comes to like the coding part. You can also go to justcoding.com. They have, you can sign up for a free subscription. And this is not an ad for Just Coding, but Just Coding is awesome. So you can sign up for a free subscription or paid. It depends, whatever you want to do, but I always recommend the free. And they do have coding exercises on there. They have some that are diagnosis coding, procedure coding, and they have some like ortho and stuff on there. So that is something that you can look into if you are interested in getting sharper with your medical coding for ortho. Also, I have my Patreon channel. Patreon, if you don't know, is a lot like YouTube. Right now, the minimum pledge is $5 per month, and you certainly do not have to keep subscribing past a month. But if you do, I have access to all of my ortho exercises. I've got lots of diagnosis coding, and I've got procedure coding on there as well. I've got crossword puzzles for medical terminology, anatomy, and pathophysiology. I've got matchup worksheets. So I try to make it fun, but there's so much content on there that you all can practice. Sometimes I give the answers. Sometimes I give a video rationale as to why and how I came up with that. I was invited, so I'm going to do it. I was invited to speak at the local AAPC chapter for Augusta, Georgia, and I'll be doing that in a couple of months. I'm going to be running the hour-long injury series, which is what I'm going to do it on. It's going to be the life cycle of injuries, right? Starting from initial, subsequent sequela examples in there as well, and then the follow-up. So that is what I'm going to be talking about in my hour, but I'm going to be posting it on my Patreon channel when it does get completed. So they will have access to that. I will not put it on Patreon, on YouTube, but I will have it on Patreon. So if you're interested in that, it's just something, I'm just throwing it out there. But yes, you've got many free resources. So orthoinfo.org, footfacts.org is also another one. Footfacts.org. Is for podiatry related things. Okay, it talks about injuries as well. So you have a lot of really good resources out there. So Caitlin says, I'm getting there for sure. Once I get these guidelines down, I will definitely click even, it will definitely click even more for me. True. Candy is the best icebreaker. It is, Elizabeth. Adeline says, thank you. Thank you. Denise says, I love watching your videos. They are so informative. I also have candy jar for my fellow secretary techs. Most people appreciate the little things in life. It's true, because they get so happy when they see that candy basket. They're like, I was like, yeah, just go, you know? But yeah, it's like, the infamous Dr. X. He's like, it's like the fountain of youth, just to be able to just get in the basket and get whatever. And I'm like, yeah, when you don't have to think about calories. When they work out all the time, they don't have to think about calories. So whatever. Congratulations on being invited to speak. I know, that's my first one, because the amazing Brian Quee recommended when I did the podcast with him on his Medical Coding Geek podcast channel. We interviewed, it was back in February. I think it was in February. I know we interviewed in February. I think it aired either late February or early March. And he said, hey, you know, Blue is a great speaker. She would be a great speaker for anybody's, you know, conference or whatever. And I got reached out by one of the members of the Augusta area chapter. So I'm like, oh, really? And she's like, yeah, you know, if you want to do it. I'm like, heck yes. Talking about my most favorite thing, which is injuries, which is something like, she's like, you can talk about anything you want. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, what can I talk about? And I'm like, injuries, because I love injuries. So, you know, we'll see. I like training my providers, so I could see how this would be, you know, something that should be much more fun, you know, because it's other coders, you know, which I have done that for my fellow coders, and they really liked my my class. So I don't know, you know, but I always like giving classes anyway. So yeah, but anyway, so that is my show for today. Tomorrow is Q&A Tuesday, and it's back, guys. I haven't done Q&A Tuesday for quite a while, a few weeks, because I wasn't getting any any questions in. Now I'm getting a plethora of questions. So I will have lots of really good content to talk about. So I hope you will join me then. It will be the first time that I will be doing this live with you, all of you. So get ready, because I'll be going over the questions and getting questions from you guys as the show goes on. So I hope you've enjoyed this. And 55% of you still haven't smashed that like button. Not like, but the subscribe button. Really? You're watching me. If you're watching me, please subscribe, because it really does mean so much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see y'all on the next video. Bye.